and we were running in the top 5. Got up to second place, and the temperature on my water just kept on rising. So we were having some sort of a coolant issue, just some freak issue, and that caused us to have to go behind the wall, and that was pretty much where our race derailed.
That's frustrating. You got to get out. You got to stay out of the grass, fella. You can't fill those radiators with grass. And Daytona. It just so happened it was when you were in the car.
Yeah, just so happens. Just so happens.
Man, isn't so that was it? So was it your drink tube or was it your cool suit that was getting hot, or was it actually the engine temp? I mean,
no. So engine temp, water temp on the car was getting too hot.
Okay.
So we couldn't risk the whole engine losing power or whatever. So we thought we could come in and maybe bleed the system or figure out something to get it to keep going, and because that doesn't take so long and you can get laps back pretty easily. Yeah. But it ended up being a reoccurring problem that just kind of kept popping up throughout the rest of the race.
That's frustrating. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, frustrating. Just a total freak issue.
Who else was your teammate? So Oliver Gavin, that was a great one. Who were your other guys?
Kyle Kirkwood, another Road to Indy guy. Like Kyle a lot, and then my full-time teammate Jack Hawksworth. So we had two Brits and 2 Americans.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Which, if you were watching the broadcast, Jack is that strapping young man that has the quick line in that Lexus commercial. I think he gets out of the car briefly, right?
We were just talking about that while you were working on the technical issues, Dol. Yeah, and Aaron, you were saying he's got a one-liner. You might be in a Lexus commercial. So is this going to be your full-time gig now? Are you in for the season with Jack then?
Yeah, so in for the season with Jack, full-time, doing both the sprint championship and all the endurance rounds. So we'll be competing the full IMSA WeatherTech championship.
Right. So this is your second season with these guys, right, or third?
Technically, my third season, but the first 2 I did were just as endurance drivers, or just the first year was endurance only.
So we kind of came up the ranks around the same time in the Road to Indy, obviously with an open wheel background, right? So what was that sort of jump like from the open wheel cars to these things?
Man, so I got to tell you, the first thing that jumped out at me, I drove the car at Daytona for the test in 2019, and I come down the end of pit lane at Daytona, and it all kind of narrows up. And I'd never been in a car where you couldn't see the wheels or you couldn't, really get a feel for it. And so I'm coming down the end of pit lane, and I think I'm in a tank. I don't even know if it's going to fit out the end of pit lane. So that was a big thing to get used to. Actually, was just the wheels and getting used to how big it was. That was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Well, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Darren.
No, I was going to say this is a pretty big car, right? Obviously front engine Lexus. Dalton, you've driven the prototype, but you haven't driven
never something that well. I tested a Canadian. At the time it was called Cast car, but it's like a K&N series car on a road course back home. That's probably that's definitely the heaviest race car I've ever driven. I'm not sure about the biggest, but it's for sure the heaviest. That was years ago. I mean the prototype, the P2 car from last year, it was a weird experience. The big thing is for me was pushing the brakes and then not being 100% sure if you've locked up, right? Because you can't see the tires.
You can't see it.
Yeah, so we've got ABS though on our car, so we don't have to worry about that as much. So, but that was another thing to get used to. Open wheel cars, no ABS.
Yeah.
You hop in a GT car and suddenly you've got ABS, traction control, all sorts of extra driver aids. But if you don't know how to use, you don't go very fast. So I still think there's skill involved to drive with ABS and all that. It's not just like a crutch.
Right.
No, I have experience. I drove when I raced in Japan in Formula 3 back in '99. The Super GTs, the GT 500s, similar kind of cars to what you're driving.
Yep.
Big downforce, big horsepower. They had ABS, and I can remember it to this day. And I didn't get much time. I was just a one-off race while some of the Japanese drivers were off in Le Mans. They kind of recruited their little Formula 3 drivers, and I remember, ABS. Tell me if that's what's happening with your ABS. Can it I remember if I had a bit of understeer, I could nearly brake harder, and if I had oversteer, I would brake harder, and it kind of figured it all out. All your problems nearly going in. Is it that good of an ABS, or like you say, there is some technique to it?
Yeah, it's a really good ABS system that we have. So yeah, to get used to it, like you just keep your foot all the way buried in the pedal, all the way into the corner, which you couldn't do that on coming from an Indy Lights car. If you try that, you're just going to miss the corner, go straight off the racetrack.
That's crazy.
So it is something to like tell your brain to get used to, that holding the brake pedal on that far into a corner is actually going to help you.
Yeah, I think I remember I was getting tired after, because I was only a young, early 20s kid driving a Formula 3 little light nimble thing. I was never very big anyway and strong. I remember I was actually having both feet on the brake pedal at one stage towards the end of the race, trying to brake, slow down, please. But no, those probably nearly top out at 200 mile an hour at the end of Daytona, right, on the long straight.
No, not quite that fast. I think we could get up to like low 180s in a draft. That's about as fast as we could go.
It's still pretty quick with for. I mean, it obviously has wings, it has aero, but it's not a high downforce car, right? So you probably feel it moving around a lot more.
Yeah, you do. It is not high downforce. The wing's big, but it doesn't have a lot of other downforce features going for it other than the diffuser.
Right.
But yeah, it moves around. Big front engine car, rear wheel drive, huge V8, lots of torque. Having to control the motors, can't just mat the gas.
Cool.
Nice. Good. So you're in the airport right now. Like I said, you're the first sort of mobile call-in that we've had to the show. So thanks for finding a quiet place. Are you in? Because you're in
worries.
Minneapolis, right? So you're heading out.
Yep, in the Minneapolis Sky Lounge.
There you go, fancy.
Nice.
Find a little
Are you
quiet corner.
testing or racing? What are you doing?
So not testing or racing, going to help drive in a commercial for Lexus. So I don't think I'm getting any speaking roles. Probably not going to see Aaron on TV unless they show who's driving the car.
But you'll be the professional stunt driver. Do not attempt. Like that's actually you.
On close courses.
Close course only.
I'll get that disclaimer.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's always a bit of fun. That'll be good times for you for sure. Hopefully, don't use it this year with something. Hopefully, the team gets some big sponsors back.
Yeah. No, so everything's good. You and your now wife Maggie, right? You guys recently bought a home.
Yes, we did.
And you've been doing all kinds of DIY stuff. You're like Mr. So it's like whenever I have a DIY question, like Aaron's the guy that'll be like, hey, can I, my heater's doing this. Like, what's the problem? And you're actually building a sauna right now.
Yeah. So I had this basement, like spare extra room that the previous owners just had as like a little workshop, but it was pretty big. So I decided I didn't need the whole room. So I've taken half of it and turned it into a sauna.
I've actually, you sent me some pictures. Let me pull those up.
I sent you some pictures of it. I've got the progress coming along pretty well. Yeah, there it is. There's a cedar on the wall. What's going on?
Nice work,
so how did you did you find plans online, and or are you kind of following a sort of a template or like a how-to, or do you kind of just doing it, you're just kind of winging it?
Yeah, so my brother actually had built a sauna years ago, and so I texted him and called him and asked some of the details on what kind of insulation or reflective foil I had to put in there, and just kind of went to town. Although I went to town in a time right now when, I don't know if anybody knows this, doesn't sound really nerdy, but wood is like as expensive as it's ever been. So probably is the most expensive sauna built in 2021, unless someone built a bigger one.
Nice work. Well, you've got to get practice for driving in that hot Lexus thing. We didn't talk about that, right? Did you? You talked a little bit, Dalton, about was it your water in your cool suit or your drink bottle? Yeah. Was it hot in the car?
So our car gets really, really hot when it's of like 70-ish degrees is when it starts getting really, really hot. And Daytona, most of the time that we were in the race, unfortunately, was either evening or the middle of night, and then a little bit in the morning. So it never got super hot for us. But yeah, if it gets over like 70 degrees ambient, inside the car gets over 30.
Wow, that's toasty.
So there you go. You can put it off as a business expense, can't you? That's fine.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely going to be called a business expense on next year's tax report.
Throw your spin bike in there. Do you use Zwift or anything, or like Peloton, or do any cycling?
So I actually tried a Peloton for the first time last week when I was down in Daytona. I did a Peloton workout. I actually don't like the Peloton bike all that much, just because I don't know, I didn't have it adjusted right, and it's on dyno flywheel, so you can't coast. The first time I tried to coast on it, I almost fell off the bike.
Oh, did like the pedals keep spinning? Is it like one of those?
Yeah, the pedals just keep
spinning.
It's like a fixie. There's no stopping them.
Yeah, that's wild. Be kind of scary. Yeah.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
What?
Dalton's got me trying to.
Yeah, you've got you're getting your Zwift set up. Do you have yours? Have you put any miles in yet, or what?
Yeah, I got a couple of miles down the road. Yeah, kids keep stealing the computer.
Darren, you don't strike me as a Peloton kind of guy.
No. When it comes to working out, I do 12-ounce curls.
Oh, that's a good call. That's what you should do.
Yeah.
So,
the recovery exercise.
It's terrible. Standing next to Dalton in bloody pit lane all the time, it's the weight I put on it. I've grown my goatee out to even hide my double chin.
Oh, good man.
There you go.
So, so I would just say you came up the ranks. Let's just talk a little bit about your road to this stage, right? And I think it's something that happens all the time. I went into sports cars after IndyCar, but you were heavily in the road to Indy, right? And Indy Lights with Dalton and etc. So when did you start in karting as well?
Yeah, definitely started in karting back when I was 8 years old at John Menard's go-kart track in Wisconsin, Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
And then did you come through the road to Indy? I don't really know for people that are listening. I only met you when you were racing with Dalton in Indy Lights, right? A few years ago.
Sure, right. Yeah, I worked my way up through the road to Indy by starting with Skip Barber's racing school and won the Mazda scholarship to get into USF 2000. So that was my jumping block to get into USF 2000, was winning that first Mazda scholarship.
Cool. But then you you made your way up, and you spent the last few years right with Bilardi. Did you drive for anybody else in Indy Lights? I can't remember.
I did test for Schmidt Peterson back in 2016, but then went with Bilardi Auto Racing for 2017 and 2018.
And that was that always your goal? Like Dalton's, his eye was always set on IndyCar, and mine was Formula One, racing in Europe and everything, and came over to IndyCar. Was your dream always IndyCar? And if you're with a team that's got some affiliation with IndyCar, I don't
Yep.
Is there any chance you might see
stoking the rumor mill over here?
Yeah, we'll start some rumors.
Something, Aaron.
I know. Yeah, when I started out in racing, the goal is to get to IndyCar, and the goal is still, I hope to be able to race in IndyCar, even if it's just the Indy 500. Right. That's still a goal of mine. Even though sports car racing is going great, and that's the top level here in North America, I still think I'd like to try IndyCar. So I'll be figuring out a way to get in there.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to see you at the 500 for sure. I mean, we had some good races back in the Freedom 100 back in the old days, and remember,
we did.
I think it was the second time or the third time that I ran it when I was with Andretti. We were coming to the line, and I got too much curb in the middle of 4, and I was running. Oh, is that your flight that they're calling for?
No, they're doing a mask announcement.
Make sure maybe keep that thing over your nose. But no, I almost lost it in the middle of 4 coming to the checkered flag, and you scooted around me and took second. I don't remember what year that was, 2017 or 18.
I think it was 17.
Yeah, those were some fun races.
There was races in Indy Lights. Not quite like the 500. You can tell, Aaron, maybe Dalton, a bit of the differences, right? He's not quite as.
I mean, I think the biggest difference really is just obviously in lights. I mean, we've both done it. You can go 2x2 and maybe 3x3 for a lot of the lap.
Yeah.
definitely 2x2 through most of the corners, right? It's like you can do that on fresh tires when there's speed difference in IndyCar, but you don't really get away with it too much. And with the aero, with the added weight of the aero screen, kind of oversaturating the outside tires, and the aero differences, like passing was so hard this year. That was
Right.
a huge shock coming from lights. It was like in lights, it's like you're more timing when you're going to cycle to the front for the finish, whereas
Yep.
like IndyCar, it's
Yeah.
like it's actually hard to pass. So that was definitely a big adjustment, but still super cool. I mean, like putting off 4 for pit stops during the race is wild, and the start was insane. I mean, it is a cool thing.
I mean, even the restarts look pretty exciting.
Yeah.
For the Indy 500.
Yep, for sure. No, it's
That's like the only place it looked like a lot of guys made moves.
yeah.
I think they might be trying to do some different aero work to try and help. I think they did some testing at the end of last year.
Yeah, they've
before it got too cold.
Yeah, they've got a few options that they tested, and apparently it was better. So I think we should have a little bit more passing this year.
Yeah. Do they do something to the aero screen to make it a little better at the speedway? Is that what they're trying to do? Does the aero screen kind of create, I don't know how?
I think with the aero screen, it's more that it's like added weight, and you're putting a lot more energy into the tires. So like you're just killing the tires a lot easier. I mean, there was also a difference in the drafting. I think there was something with the the way the air was coming off the car with the wake, like you couldn't quite draft as well. So the changes that they're making, the aero screen's more or less staying the same for next year, but there's just they've added some aero bits to try to help that efficiency in the dirty air and all that. So hopefully that'll help us just get a little closer to kind of get that run through the corner.
Yeah, I think I think it's something to do with the underwing.
It's like barge boards and some other bits.
Yeah, like trying to get some more aerodynamics from front downforce from the underfloor,
as opposed to the wings,
the under tray that doesn't get affected from the wake. So because that was what was you're just maxed out on front wing extensions or wickers galore on the front wing, which is tiny anyway at the best of times. You just can't get enough in for the downforce that you want to run on the rear wing to balance. Right. So I think they're trying to get some more efficiency front aerodynamic wise from the underwing, so you can keep that aero in through the corners. So
definitely,
I'm sure it'll be better. I'm sure so because it was like you say, don't want it
first year with this huge change. Yeah,
the tire degradation with the extra weight was more than what they thought. So there might be some, and there wasn't any tire testing right with COVID. So it wasn't as bad as Texas, where you're only allowed to do 25 laps instead of 60. But it was still quite a lot of tire degradation. So
now that actually brings me to something with the GT cars that I've been kind of curious about. So like obviously with an open wheel car, even on a street course, right, or on a road and street course, if you have a long high speed corner, you have to pay attention to the aero wash from the car in front of you, right? Because you're going to lose the front wing and get washed out.
Yep.
Was that an adjustment jumping into a GT car where I'm assuming that effect is far less or not really there as much?
Yeah, it just, for me, it was just better to follow. Like straight away, I was like, oh my gosh, you can actually follow in these cars.
Yeah.
It still affects it though.
Okay.
When you do get really close up to a car, and especially in high speed corners, like I think the VIR, if you're right on somebody going through the S's, the uphill S's, that can get a little sketchy just because of how much you are relying on any air you can get to come over the car. And if you're right under somebody, it does still affect the GT cars, but not nearly to the effect of an open wheel car. So yeah, the racing is just closer. You're just able to follow people closer through corners.
Yeah, no, and it definitely shows in the racing. I mean, the 24 this year, like, I think the perception in years past and when the cars maybe weren't as reliable was that it was more of an endurance thing. But you watch these races now, and it's like a sprint race the whole way almost.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, there's epic battles going on pretty much all throughout the race in each class. So pretty incredible racing. I mean, the overall winner pretty much came down to, I think the Chip Ganassi car blew a tire and it was running down the leader.
Yep. Yeah, those last like 20 minutes I was watching here on TV. It was really exciting. It was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I turned back in for the last stint. Was like 20 minutes to go. I'm like, oh damn, Albuquerque's gonna catch him here, and this is huge for a 24 hour. But most of the race, on the telemetry there on the
They're all
TV,
pretty
the
close.
four classes. I think LMP3. They had a couple of guys drop out, or maybe not so many cars, but all the categories, the top five were always within this on the same lap and like really close.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I think each class did have 3 or 4 cars, even at the finish, still on the lead lap. Which
Yeah.
It's
you
pretty
think about
impressive. Yeah.
24 hours and you can still keep that many cars on it. GTD, I think, had 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And like you say, all running hard. Like I remember back in the DP days, the Daytona prototype days when I drove for Ganassi and a couple of other teams, and Ganassi was like, you guys just, I want you to be flat out quali laps like every lap, and tell the mechanics just make it finish.
Right.
Whatever we need to do to just race hard the whole race, and it's still, I think, with the cars are just so good.
Yeah.
I mean, that car's pretty good. The Lexus is a pretty racy car, right? I mean, it's not really very production.
No, yeah, it's a great car, and to be honest with you, the thing has awesome reliability too. This was like a freak issue that we had. Most of the time, we've got great reliability at all the races we had last year and before that. So yeah, and it's the same across the board though. These cars are just able to take a beating for a long time. We've affectionately nicknamed the Lexus the War Pig.
War Pig. That's funny. Is it so I'm just
Don't
looking at.
say that in the commercial.
Yeah.
Aaron.
No, probably can't say.
Drive
that in
your
the
kids
commercial,
to
but it's
school
good
in the
because
War
the race
Pig.
car's got its own theme song. It's got its own theme song.
I love it. Come on, what is it? Do you know it? What is it? What's the theme?
Black
Oh, the Black
Sabbath.
Sabbath song.
Yeah.
Oh,
War Pigs.
War Pig. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I should sing that. I could put a Brummy accent on, just like
I
that's
bet you
my
could. Some
karaoke.
Ozzy. Put some
Iron
Ozzy on.
Man and Paranoid are my
There
favorites.
you go.
Yep.
So what's your, I had a brief chance to experience the IMSA paddock and the racing last year, but it was only a few races. Like, what's your favorite thing about it that's maybe different from the open wheel world?
Yeah, like the one thing that I really like about the IMSA paddock is that it's sort of like okay to be genuinely stoked for other drivers. Like I think when you go up the junior open wheel ladder, even if it's your teammate who's doing well, you still want to beat him.
Yeah.
But in IMSA, like if Jack kicks butt, or like even if Frankie or Townsend kick butt in other car, like I'm gonna be stoked for him, like genuinely stoked, which I feel like is sometimes missing from open wheel a bit.
Yeah, it can be a little bit more cutthroat, maybe, or a bit more just everyone's a bit more uptight.
Yeah, a little bit can be that way.
No, I always liked it. Like you say, there's so many variables in the IMSA paddock, right? You don't get much testing time because you got to share the car. You're not necessarily doing like in open wheels, right? Everybody's putting new tires on right now.
Yep.
We know what lap times. Like there's none of that anymore. This is longevity. It's not one lap pace. So you don't really know. I always found it difficult. And you don't. The P2 races, it was always, how on the, everybody says you're doing a great job, but you kind of,
It's so hard to
never
know
really
because
know.
it's like, who's getting traffic laps, who's getting a clean run, and all that, right? Yeah. So how's that managing the, being in the GTD, right? You're getting passed by the LMP guys, by the GTLM. Like, how's that process kind of managing that, like mentally dealing with guys flashing their blinkers at you and being a little nuts as the DPI guys tend to be?
Right. Well, I can tell you that at the 24 Hours of Daytona, your spotter is a humongous asset. So we had great spotters, a couple of NASCAR guys. TJ Majors, he spots for, oh gosh, I don't remember who he spots for. And then Tony, I forgot Tony's last name. They spot for a couple of NASCAR guys. And anyways, they were great, really great spotters. And that's what really helps you manage traffic. And then it's kind of an art to know how you let, the prototypes by. They're pretty easy, but it's more how you let the cars that are similar speed to you, like the GTLMs or the LMP3s, how you let those cars get by, so you don't lose a lot of time.
Yeah, and I think going into it, right, there was a little bit. I mean, we were talking a bit, and just on Twitter and stuff. I think there was a bit of anxiety about the LMP3s, but it didn't seem really like they were like involved in that many issues. I mean, there was a big
No,
pace difference. Like some guys were laps down, but from what I remember, like it wasn't like they weren't the menace that people were expecting, which is I think a really good thing.
no, they didn't. They didn't actually cause many problems at all. They did a pretty solid job all the way around. But you know, it would be frustrating if you were around one that was maybe just like a little bit faster than you, or
Right.
even like a little bit slower than you. So you had that from time to time. But by and large, the LMP3 guys did a great job. I know they were getting a lot of crap on social media or whatever before the race,
Yeah.
but they held their own.
I think it's good for the sport. You know, having 3 classes and a more affordable category for guys. You know, some gentleman drivers to get into the sport and bring some other drivers in there, right? Because there was some LMP3 teams that had some pretty damn good drivers in there because where they wouldn't have driven the Daytona 24 hours maybe if there wasn't that category.
Right, right. I think that's just it. Some of those guys had been doing the Michelin Pilot Cup series or prototype challenge, whatever it is, in those cars, and so as soon as they heard there was an opportunity that they could take that same car and do the 24 hours of Daytona, I mean, you know, you had guys hop at it. 8 cars on their first go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now we're creeping up on 8:30 here. What's your schedule like for your flight? You have a are you
I gotta probably get heading down to the gate for it. We board at 7:30.
Alrighty, so we won't keep you for much longer. So Aaron, thanks for coming on and chatting with us. Really appreciate it. We'll have to do this again sometime. This was fun.
Definitely, this is good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah. And
Say
you're
hey
so
to
you
the missus.
yeah say hi to Maggie and say hi to the dog Winston, little cutie.
We'll do. Sounds good.
So
We'll have to come back on sometime and we'll do like a beer and racing podcast.
I like that. That's a good one. Hey, you could be in your sauna, right? You can have your
I
iPad
could.
set up. And so
Yeah.
last thing, when's your next race? When's the next time we'll see you out there?
Next race is 12 hours of Sebring in March.
Alrighty, so pay attention to that. Follow Aaron on his social, and we'll see you then. All right. Thanks
All right. See you
everybody.
guys.
Later.